AstroPrinciple speaks of the quiet threads that bind generations, where ancestral karma moves like an unseen river shaping intuition, choices, and emotional tides. When the past seeks healing, the soul feels a subtle pull toward awareness. In this journey of understanding Pitra Dosha, the heart becomes a bridge between what was and what can be transformed through clarity, compassion, and inner alignment. Pitra Dosha is identified when the ninth house, the domain of ancestors and dharma, is afflicted by Rahu, Ketu, Saturn, or when the ninth lord becomes debilitated, combust, or placed in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house. A weakened sun, or sun a Rahu Grahan Yoga, especially in Dusthana houses, intensifies ancestral imbalance. The 5th house also reveals karmic Pitra Dosha, showing past life lineage depths when Rahu or Ketu occupy it, or when the 5th lord is debilitated or trapped in the 6th, 8th, or 12th house. Affliction in ancestral nakshatras such as Magha, Ashlesha, or Bharni deepens the karmic imprint. Together, these placements reflect unresolved duties, emotional residue, and generational energy seeking balance across the lineage. Aries feels ancestral patterns through sudden impulses, unfinished responsibilities, or recurring conflicts that echo across time. AstroPrinciple reminds you that Mars guides your fire, urging you to confront what earlier generations left unresolved. When Pitra Dosha is active, you may sense delays in personal victories or emotional restlessness that has no clear source. The key is noticing when your courage feels blocked or when relationships mirror old wounds. This dosha often appears through strained family bonds or duties that return repeatedly until acknowledged. Your path to clarity begins with grounding your energy, honoring the elders who shaped your lineage, and allowing forgiveness to soften the inner battlefield. When you pause long enough to listen, the ancestral voice becomes a guide rather than a burden, helping you reclaim your strength with renewed purpose. Taurus experiences ancestral karma through patterns of attachment, financial fluctuations, or responsibilities that feel heavier than expected. AstroPrinciple teaches that Vinas shapes your desire for stability, yet Pitra Dosha may create subtle resistance in areas where comfort should flow naturally. You may notice recurring family expectations, inherited emotional weight, or obligations that seem to follow you despite your efforts to maintain peace. This dosha often reveals itself when material progress slows or when relationships carry echoes of past generations' unresolved emotions. Your healing begins with acknowledging the roots of your loyalty and understanding that not every burden is yours to carry. When you honor your lineage with gratitude while releasing outdated patterns, your inner landscape becomes fertile again. Through patience and gentle awareness, you transform ancestral heaviness into grounded strength. Gemini senses Pitra Dosha through communication gaps, misunderstandings, or mental restlessness that seems inherited rather than self-created. AstroPrinciple highlights Mercury's influence, making you sensitive to ancestral stories, unspoken truths, and fragmented memories. This dosha may appear when family narratives feel incomplete or when your mind carries questions that no one has answered. You may notice repeating cycles of miscommunication or emotional distance within the family tree. The dosha becomes clearer when your curiosity leads you to patterns that existed long before you. Healing begins by giving voice to what was silenced, allowing conversations, internal or external, to bring clarity. When you honor the wisdom of your ancestors while releasing their fears, your thoughts regain harmony. Through mindful reflection, you transform inherited confusion into understanding and renewed mental freedom. Cancer feels ancestral karma more deeply than any sign, as the moon governs your emotional tides and family bonds. AstroPrinciple reveals that Pitra Dosha may surface through unexplained sadness, recurring family responsibilities, or a longing for emotional closure that spans generations. You may sense patterns of sacrifice, unresolved grief, or duties passed down through the maternal or paternal line. This dosha becomes visible when your nurturing nature feels overwhelmed or when family expectations weigh heavily on your heart. Healing begins with acknowledging the emotional imprints you carry and recognizing which ones belong to you and which ones belong to those who came before. When you offer compassion to your lineage and allow your intuition to guide you, the ancestral waters begin to calm. Through emotional honesty and gentle release, you transform inherited wounds into deep inner strength. Leo feels ancestral karma through moments when confidence dims without reason or when recognition arrives slower than expected. AstroPrinciple shows how the sun shapes your identity. Yet Pitra Dosha may cast subtle shadows on self-expression, leadership, or family pride. You may notice patterns of strained authority figures, unresolved lineage expectations, or emotional distance between generations. This dosha becomes clearer when your natural radiance feels burdened by duties or memories that are not entirely your own. Healing begins with acknowledging the stories of your ancestors while reclaiming your inner light. When you honor your lineage without absorbing its unhealed wounds, your heart regains its warmth. Through compassion and steady self-awareness, you transform inherited heaviness into courage, allowing your spirit to shine with renewed clarity. Virgo senses Pitra dosha through patterns of over-responsibility, perfectionism, or health concerns that seem rooted in family history. AstroPrinciple reminds you that Mercury guides your analytical nature, making you sensitive to ancestral imbalances in duty, service, or emotional restraint. This dosha may appear when you feel compelled to fix what others left unresolved or when family expectations shape your choices more than you realize. You may notice recurring themes of sacrifice, unspoken obligations, or generational worry. Healing begins with understanding that not every task belongs to you and that ancestral patterns can be acknowledged without being repeated. When you bring gentle awareness to your inner world, the weight of inherited expectations begins to soften. Through mindful release and quiet compassion, you transform ancestral pressure into grounded clarity. Libra experiences ancestral karma through relationship patterns, emotional imbalances, or unresolved family conflicts that echo across generations. AstroPrinciple highlights Vinas as your guiding force, making harmony essential to your well-being. Pitra dosha may reveal itself when partnerships feel burdened by old stories or when fairness becomes difficult to maintain within family dynamics. You may notice repeating cycles of emotional distance, unspoken resentment, or obligations that disrupt your inner balance. This dosha becomes clearer when your desire for peace feels challenged by inherited tensions. Healing begins with acknowledging the emotional truths that were overlooked in your lineage and allowing your heart to restore equilibrium. When you honor your ancestors with gratitude while releasing their unresolved conflicts, your relationships gain depth and authenticity. Through gentle awareness, you transform inherited imbalance into graceful harmony. Into deep inner strength. Scorpio feels Pitra dosha through deep emotional undercurrents, intuitive warnings, or recurring themes of secrecy and transformation within the family line. AstroPrinciple shows how Mars shapes your intensity, making you sensitive to ancestral wounds that were hidden or unspoken. This dosha may appear when you sense unresolved grief, power struggles, or emotional patterns that repeat across generations. You may notice moments when your inner strength feels tested by burdens that seem older than your own experiences. Healing begins with acknowledging the shadows of your lineage and allowing your intuition to guide you toward release. When you honor the past without becoming entangled in it, Your emotional depth becomes a source of renewal. Through courage and inner truth, you transform inherited pain into profound resilience. Sagittarius feels Pitra Dosha through restless quests, unfinished journeys, or beliefs that seem inherited rather than chosen. AstroPrinciple shows how Jupiter expands your horizons, yet ancestral karma may create subtle barriers in learning, travel, or spiritual growth. You may notice repeating themes of family expectations around education, philosophy, or moral duty. This dosha becomes clearer when your optimism feels weighed down by responsibilities that echo across generations. You may sense that certain dreams pause until ancestral stories are acknowledged. Healing begins with honoring the wisdom of your lineage while freeing yourself from outdated beliefs. When you allow gratitude to guide your understanding, the path ahead becomes lighter. Through reflection and inner truth, you transform inherited limitations into expansive clarity. Capricorn experiences Pitra Dosha through responsibilities that arrive early, ambitions shaped by family history, or emotional restraint passed down through generations. AstroPrinciple reminds you that Saturn governs your discipline, making you sensitive to ancestral patterns of duty, sacrifice, or unfulfilled goals. This dosha may appear when progress slows despite effort or when family expectations influence your choices more than you admit. You may notice recurring themes of authority, legacy, or emotional distance within your lineage. Healing begins with acknowledging the weight you carry and recognizing which burdens are not yours. When you honor your ancestors with respect while releasing their unfinished struggles, your path becomes steadier. Through patience and inner maturity, you transform inherited pressure into purposeful strength. Aquarius senses Pitra Dosha through emotional detachment, generational misunderstandings, or patterns of feeling different from your family. AstroPrinciple highlights Saturn's influence, shaping your desire for independence while making you aware of ancestral imbalances in belonging or emotional expression. This dosha may reveal itself when you feel responsible for breaking old cycles or when family traditions conflict with your inner truth. You may notice recurring themes of isolation, unconventional roles, or unspoken expectations. Healing begins with understanding that your uniqueness is part of your lineage's evolution. When you honor the past without being confined by it, your vision becomes clearer. Through compassion and steady awareness, you transform inherited distance into authentic connection. Pisces feels Pitra Dosha through deep empathy, intuitive memories, or emotional waves that seem older than your own experiences. AstroPrinciple shows how Jupiter guides your spiritual sensitivity, making you receptive to ancestral emotions, dreams, and unresolved stories. This dosha may appear when boundaries blur or when you absorb the feelings of your lineage without realizing it. You may notice recurring themes of sacrifice, compassion, or unspoken grief within your family line. Healing begins with recognizing what belongs to you and what belongs to those who came before. When you offer gentle forgiveness to your lineage and allow your intuition to guide your release, the emotional waters begin to clear. Through inner peace and soulful awareness, you transform inherited sorrow into spiritual strength. AstroPrinciple reminds you that ancestral karma is not a burden but a doorway to understanding. When you listen to the quiet echoes of your lineage, clarity rises and healing begins. Pitra Dosha becomes a guide, revealing where compassion, awareness, and gentle release can restore balance. As you honor the past with gratitude, the path ahead opens with renewed light and soulful alignment.